I've photographed Alice Waters many times, not a few times. Okay. The first time I photographed her was in an apple orchard here on the East Coast, and with several other people from the food world. And she's sitting under apple trees. She has a way of taking every single situation, not only romanticizing it, but making it seem poetic and very beautiful. I had this idea to photograph her and her daughter, Fanny, for the Women's Project, a mother and daughter. They were on the East Coast, and I took them to a fruit orchard to photograph them together. And it was a beautiful orchard with apple trees and peaches. And I took these photographs of her and Fanny together. And they were good, but it was funny. I felt like Fanny was older and sort of ready for her own photograph. She was ready for her own imagery. And I wasn't happy with those photographs with Fanny and Alice. When we were talking about doing a new shoot for the masterclass, Alice Waters' name came up, and I got excited because I thought I can go back again and try to tackle this idea of how to take a photograph of Alice. And honestly, it really made me think that this could be a great third chance or fourth chance to take a photograph of Alice that mattered or worked for me. You have to really start thinking, well, what do you really think of Alice Waters? And that really does feed the ideas. It can be extremely obvious, where the ideas can come from. I mean, Alice Waters to me is like a force behind the food movement today. I mean, she is responsible for the way we eat in the United States today. So this time, I started to talk to some of Alice's friends, Mona Talbot, Laura Zarubin, people that I know who worked with Alice at some point and went out into the world and created their own worlds and have influence in their own spheres. But I was literally in the kitchen with Laura Zarubin, and we just started talking. And I started to realize that what Alice really is she's sort of the emblem or the symbol for this, and such an important force behind the food movement and eating right. And of course, she's responsible for the edible schoolyard, which is very important. And I started to think of an image of her that could be more poster-like. And I was thinking of the Russian revolutionary posters. I was thinking of the French revolutionary posters. I started to look at photographs of during World War II. Alice talks about this herself, having a victory garden, which is all that really is setting up a small vegetable garden in your own backyard. And there's a lot of imagery from that of working in your own backyard. And I thought maybe that is the photograph I should take of Alice, instead of trying to be so natural and so relaxed, maybe it should be more formal. And I hadn't seen a photograph like that of Alice, because one of the things you can do is you can, of course, Google pictures, and you can look at a lot of different imagery of Alice, and you see that, she's constantly being asked to sort of stand in a garden or in a kitchen, or to do these things that which are great, but I haven't seen a photograph of her that sort of like makes her the symbol of her movement. So that's a big, tall order to try to even consider doing on some level. But I thought I would try. We have the reference material that I did walk around with. There's a French photographer, Boubert, as well as Julia Margaret Cameron. And I think when I found this photograph, Julia Margaret Cameron's picture, it kind of embodied what I sort of think of Alice in a simple way without having to have her literally working, in a garden. This photograph that I was sort of enamored with for its simplicity, that I think sort of gave me a foundation for the Alice Waters portrait, and reminded me about being simple and straightforward in a portrait. And there was something about the character in this woman and her confidence in herself from this period, which is kind of remarkable. And then I'm looking in the back. First of all, the subject is named Alice. Her name is Alice Liddell. And in the little bio in the back, it explains that perhaps best known as the little girl for whom Lewis Carroll wrote the book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So it's kind of synchronicity here where, this kind of elusiveness about Alice Waters, who has a kind of this aspect to her that I don't think I could necessarily pinpoint or even talk about, I guess, is there in this. I think what I was drawn to is this young woman has, somehow or another, a bit of Alice Waters, in her. So it's kind of remarkable. I just love finding out that history, that this is actually the young woman from, Alice in Wonderland. As I said before, looking at, poster style imagery, and also, to even mention, the migrant workers, the people in the field, pictures of people working the land. But I honestly didn't have a set idea how this is going to work.
Hey, Alice.
Because my first instinct would be, oh, just put on a pair of, jeans and roll up your sleeves in your shirt and go out and look like you're working, in the garden or something. But she doesn't wear those kinds of clothes. So you're kind of immediately brought to a kind of more flowy feel, which is not, wrong for Alice, because she is sensual. She's extremely sensual. I think that what I wasn't prepared for was because I was talking to Laura one more time, and we were talking about it, in her new book, in her new memoir. She has this chapter about, the peach, and what the peach means to her, and how the peach is so symbolic to her because it opens up all the senses. It's interesting about the peach because the peach is only really available 3 or 4 months of the year. When you have them in season, they're the most extraordinary fruit. So it's a very special piece of fruit for her. What I did ask Laura to do, I said, you know what, Laura, just come out to California. Let's go. You come to California to the shoot, and let's help Alice, get ready for this photograph. And then why don't you go out and look for peaches, and this woman with her family, set off to work the orchards that she had. And she said, you know what? I found 4 peaches left on the very last tree in the orchard. These are called last chance peaches because they come in later in the season. She drove them from Napa Valley down to Alice's house. Those peaches became so symbolic to us all because they were the very last ones of the season. I was just determined to use these peaches because I just felt they just meant so much. Music is a funny thing. It goes in and out of my shoots. I used to work on song lists, for many years that I loved. I used to make them myself, and I would have young assistants that would put together song lists. I don't underestimate the power of playing music, during a shoot. But we were putting together a song list, in the car right before we went into Alice's. They were songs I thought, maybe Alice might like. But as we started to play them or blast them by mistake, Laura said, no, 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 Alice really likes this music from the 20s, like for this French music. And Laura put it on, and Alice was taken away.
Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui se perd sur sa bouche.
It sort of can enhance a shoot if you have the right music. If you have the wrong music, it's deadly. It's bad. Sometimes it's a surprise, when just to have music during a sitting, it kind of just, takes someone away and lets them relax.
Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours.
Woke up in the morning in the hotel, and I looked out. I saw there was not a cloud in the sky, and I just immediately know it's going to be a tough shoot for me because I'm outside, and I count on, for the kind of work that I do, I really count on overcast days. Either overcast or cloudy days, because the flat light works really well for me. I love flat light. It's very, very beautiful. And then I can easily add a little bit of direction with a single strobe. So when I woke up and looked out the window and saw there wasn't a cloud in the sky, I knew I was going to have, I knew it was going to be difficult, and I also knew it would be short. Because as soon as the sun really came up, or as soon as we lost our shade in her backyard or in her front yard, it would be over. It really would be over, because I would be fighting the light from then on. I mean, it was coming up pretty fast, in our shoot. And in fact, we weren't supposed to start till 9 o'clock, but I got her going earlier. It was a little after 8 or 8:30, because I saw that the light was coming up, and it was really going to be brutal. And, I literally was tucking ourselves into areas of the yard where I had the shade. In some of the areas, I used some of the natural light, and I shaded her face with a silk and tried to bring back some light with a little bit of a strobe. And I kind of liked what it was doing. So one had the feeling, looking at the picture, that it was natural light, but there was a little bit of control especially on Alice's face. It was just, it was important to me that we tried to use as much of the natural light as possible with Alice. It seemed like part of the look for Alice Waters.